Good morning from Boston. Um, this is the India Discovery Center's seminar. I want to say a few words about India Discovery Center before we start. This is a group we began about 5 years ago when we realized that the children's education abroad, or even in India, is inadequate compared to what India is. And we did not ourselves know what India is or India was, what India should be, what India's contributions are. But once we study, they look so massive, so phenomenal that it can't be mapped. So hence to bring it to the world that India is a planet, India is larger than any country, India is a culture on its own, India is a universal culture. And that somehow to communicate to the new youth here in abroad, also back in India, that you have something gold in front of you. It is not comparable to any other country, nationality, religion, culture. So then question is how India became what it became, and India got occupied and lost it all. So that became the question which kind of normally as we immigrants here, people ask such questions to us. That look, if it is so good, why it is so poor? The answer to that is unknown or can't be answered easily. But the question is, once we have this universality, certain narrowness doesn't come in. But that's the difficult part to discover. What we are after today, what we learned through the process, the largest contribution of India to the world has been in language. Language as a function of cosmology, language as the origin of the universe. So language, which is intelligence. Language is something that we do. Other things are done upon us. We receive information by our senses. We give information by our speech. And this has been massive literature on it. So through this process of the seminars and some meetings, what we're trying to do is, if we can explore this. And it so happens that there is no speech model, and people think, because it can't be done, so people think the language is learned. People don't try to understand that as I'm speaking, the language I'm creating each word that I'm saying. And that creation is so fast, I don't even understand it. It appears as though it is canned somewhere. So that is where we come from. We want to make a quantitative language model where we can say that this is what I thought and this is what I spoke. And when I spoke that, I have my voice, I have my intonation, I have my emotion, I have my intentionality, I have the audience, I have my grammar. So all that combined together from a simple thought to a speech. So that's our goal. So in order to achieve that, we are doing this kind of seminars to understand. We did 3 seminars, we have already done 3 seminars on cognition. 2 of them are not recorded, but I have the slides. If people want to send me mail, I can send these slides. And the 3rd seminar on cognition by Jaspal, July, that recorded. And today we have, from cognition, we're moving into mind, brain, intentionality. So these 3 terms we have to understand because they come in the process of speech. Now, what we are doing is how these terms are understood in the world literature now, but we have to understand them globally, experimented as inside of us, as local experiments. As I'm speaking, I am using my mind. I'm speaking, I'm using my brain. I'm speaking, I'm using my intentionality. And then I'm using my physiology. I'm using my oral organs. And then I'm causing my lungs to breathe. And then sound comes out. Then I'm modulating the sound. So all these are physical phenomena. So we have to understand. So any of you who have interest in any of these parts of this, elements of this, I would like to know, or would like to say, please share with us. We also want to know other languages. India has many languages, so their grammar, the way it's spoken, if the linguistics, if any of you know, or if you want to share, you can also, we can do seminars on them. So in order to achieve that, what I'll do is I will go around as I see the names, I will read the name and I will request each of you to make a one sentence statement about what brings you to the seminar and if you have expertise in any of the things I mentioned. Not that you must have, but we like to know if we have. So that will help us. So I go with from the top, Balachandra, he doesn't seem to be there. So Vittaman, oh, Ramapriya. Okay. What you do is you unmute yourself on the computer and speak one sentence. Unmute the.
Hi, good morning. This is Ramapriya from
Please.
Bilrika. You can hear me?
Just one sentence. Just one sentence.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
an, yeah.
I am interested in learning about it in the sense that I don't have any specific knowledge with any specific language at this point to contribute to.
Balachandra, you want to speak? What is introducing yourself? Anything you want to talk about language? One sentence. Unmute. Oh, probably you're not ready. All right. We skip Bella. Can Bala go or not go?
Okay, hold on. Okay, I'm interested in the origin of language, how language originated in the human mind.
Okay.
That's my basic interest. Thank you.
Okay. So unfortunately, I can't unmute you. Nick Mishra. I will skip Bella. Nick Mishra Houston.
Yes, my interest is just like Dr. Balachandra is to know more about how language came into being. I think it is evolutionary, but I will know more. Thank you.
Okay. Bashant Machwe.
I don't have any question. I would like to listen.
Oh, no, I want to know, if you are Professor Basant Machwe, just one sentence. How do you relate to the seminar today from the whatever I said from the language and evolution point of view?
My comment is that it is a very good seminar and it originates something new to understand through brain, about brain and then how the languages have been developed.
Okay, all right. Prem will introduce him. Prem, you want to say one sentence? Prem is part of a language research group. Anything more you want to add, Prem? Unmute.
Yeah, this is Prem. And I have a deep interest in Indian philosophy and language, not only the origin, but how it articulates and how do we form words, sentences, grammar. And I'm actively associated with the India Discovery Center Language Project as well. Thank you.
So Jaspal gave the last seminar. Jaspal, he's also part of our language research group. Would you say a few words? Why somebody's putting?
I said I will pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
iPhone. Who is iPhone? Okay. Nishaji. Nishaji from Oregon.
Yeah, I'm Nisha Joshi from Oregon. And my curiosity is how thought comes out. Just you were explaining that how thought comes out with proper grammar, proper intonation and emotions. So that is the curiosity brought me here.
Bhaskar. Shari.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to this seminar. I speak Telugu as a language, and I'm very curious. Everyone says that your thoughts are always in your mother tongue, and having command on mother tongue makes one think more faster, and I'm curious about it. Is that true, or there is no truth to it? So would like to know more about it, and I'm certainly very interested in understanding origin of languages and how language brings the richness and expression of one's thoughts.
Shivani Joshi. Be brief.
Hello. So I was brought to this seminar from my uncle, Prem Nagar, and he told me about the seminar, and I was interested in it because I have some background in psychology, and I also, as a musician, I am interested in learning about how language has been passed on through the scriptures and through orally, and just understanding language through the ages, I guess.
Prema Bangir. You're a poet.
Yeah. I am, yeah, Bengera. Thank you for inviting me here. So I'm interested in language because I am a poet, aspiring or whatever, in whatever level. I'm a writer, so I studied writing. I'm extremely interested I speak English, Hindi, and Tulu. And so I grew up with multiple mother tongues. And so I'm really interested in how we end up creating our own languages, and how when we mix these languages together, we're still able to communicate with our families and with maybe friends. So how this language comes together, how we create our own languages, and also how can we use language to create change?
Right. I see people are talking a lot of questions. So I wanted to hear what people have done. Questions will remain. So anything that you have done, you have explored, so that will help us. We're not teachers, we're researchers. So anyway, so I hear all, but I want to emphasize that if whichever way you can contribute, I know my voice, I know my grammar, I know my thoughts, I have done the following experiment. So those kind of will be helpful to us, and also how best you can really contribute. Chandu, Chandu, want to say a few words? Chandu is our host. Chandu Shah, he is hosting our program today, and he's part of our India Discovery Center. Chandu, you can speak a few words.
I would just say that I write in Gujarati language, but I'm interested in different aspects of other languages, and of course the origin and the evolution of language.
Okay, Professor Bibhu Mahanti, an old friend. I saw you are from Canada, right?
Yes, namaskar.
Okay, namaskar. So, what's your interest in our topic, and how best you can help us?
Well, I'm from the University of Toronto, and I'm a physicist, but I have a very strong interest in linguistics, and particularly the evolution of languages in the Indian subcontinent. So I'm looking forward to this seminar.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Prashanna ji.
Namaste, sir. I'm from Bangalore. I'm from Sanskrit background. I'm a researcher. I'm a lecturer in Sanskrit. So my area of interest is, like generally we have come across various bija mantras and mantras. Like in Sanskrit also we have Om. We have in Buddhism also Om, Mani Padma, Om. All these words are there. Like, do they have any effect on our brain? Like they are having some bija mantras in garlands of letters. We can come across various these bija mantras. How they're affected towards our mind? Is there any connection between those letters and the repetition of those words? Like this is my area of interest, sir.
Very good. Professor Dr. Shah, Dinesh Shah from Florida.
Yes. Well, I'm a biophysicist by training and was interested that how in Indian subcontinent these 22 languages came up. And I was also interested in this japa and mantra and its effect on physiological functions. So I'm sort of a novice trying to learn what is there in this topic, mind, brain, and intentionality. Thank you.
Good. Sangeeta ji.
This is a new area for me. I heard about it in another seminar where we explore some of the ancient Indian texts, which is an interest for me. So I'm here just to learn about this area.
Okay. Harsh Mehta. Harsh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Happy to be able to join. I'm here to learn from the learned individuals here. I have not contributed anything in this field.
Okay, somehow I'm missing. Okay. Sridhar. Sridhar.
Mishra, he's my father-in-law, Parul's father. He is a psychiatrist, and I asked him to speak up. Okay.
Sridhar Sharma.
Yes.
Move on. Shivram.
Yeah. Namaste, everyone. My mother tongue is Tamil, but I've lived in Karnataka for more than 16 years, so I understand and speak Kannada, and also doing my research on Sanskrit. So I'm keen to know how these different languages play in these three dimensions of mind, brain, and intentionality.
Okay. Debnaran Patnaik. Debnan is the survivor of COVID-19. All right. Debnan, you want to say something? He's not there. Rabi Nene.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ravi. I have been associated with IDC from the beginning, and now I'm just trying to learn.
Oh, got it out. All right. Gopi. Professor Gopinath from Suffolk.
Good morning. I'm a follower of Ramana Maharishi, who says we need to kill the mind to realize the self. So I want to hear from Dr. Bela Kosaras what the mind is all about.
All right. And Dr. Stevens, I think he's my neighbor in Lincoln. He called me last night. So you want to say a few words? Is he around? Maybe not around. Ram. Who is Ram? Okay. All right. So much. 30 people. So I think I just want to do this so that because we are doing it, because Corona, we're doing it the video and so on, is one way convenient, but at the same time, it doesn't become intimate. So I'm trying to make as global, as local as we can be as we are seeing each other, so that we know each other, and so that it's like a more friendly company. So in order now, we proceed to Bela's talk, and to introduce Bela, I invite Prem Nagar will have a short introduction to Bela, and then Bela will give his presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay Mishra. It's my privilege and honor to introduce Bela Kosaras. Dr. Kosaras was born in Hungary. He was trained as a neuroanatomist and took his MD degree from University of Pécs, Hungary in 1969. From 69 to 1982, he taught human anatomy and histology. He served from 83 to 87 as a neurologist and neurology clinic of University of Pécs and made a board exam in neurology. He worked at the Department of Anatomy of University of Mainz in Germany in 1981. His research had been on the pineal gland in mice extending to the structure and the function of myelin. He came as a visiting professor to Harvard Medical School in 1987 and continued his work on myelin structure and function. He moved to the Primate Research Center of Harvard Medical School in 1993 and worked on retina and myelin in the mutant mice. He participated in the production of the first high-resolution brain atlas of the mouse. From 2003, he worked in the Bethesda Wright Hospital and Children's Hospital at Boston and worked on the myelin degradation, epilepsy, and retinal degeneration. His research work is published in more than 50 papers in Journal of Comparative Neurology, Journal of Neurochemistry, and Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. Dr. Kosaras retired from Harvard Medical School in 2012 and has been a contributor to India Discovery Center Language Project since 2014. India Discovery Center is proud to present Dr. Bela Kosaras in Language Research Series seminar, and today he'll be illuminating us on mind, brain, and intentionality. Dr. Bela Kosaras, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Bela Kosaras.
Thank you very much for this kind, nice introduction. And as Prem told in this introduction, that I joined to the Indian Discovery Group led by Bijoy Mishra, and we met at the Primate Center where we created the three-dimensional mouse brain atlas. And since that, 14, I tried to contribute something according to my knowledge. And now I'd like to present you this topic according to my taste and collection of different papers that I found. It is a mixture of philosophical and biological papers. And I'd like to go through a little bit historical aspect of this development, how the mind and the brain itself and the intentionality changes during these several hundreds years. So from the beginning. So first, I'd like to go through the concept of mind that was interested the people in the very old ages, the Greeks, Romans, and they describe about the concept of mind as mixed names, named soul, spirit, because it was really difficult to grasp, because it isn't objective, something that you can see or grasp. And they describe these Aristoteles and the psyche, which is ontologically unstable, and the psyche means in Greece rush of air, blah, breath, and later they use the name as soul, conscious self, the source of life, the meaning of life, the principle of life. Aristotle is used as intelligence, immediate awareness, intuitive intellect. And Aristotle is, interestingly, in his work of the metaphysics, started his discussion that all men by nature desire to know. Yes, it is nice, but it seems it's at a very different level the people are desired to know about the environment, about itself, and in the new era, which I found in the Encyclopedia Britannica issue 1988, the definition of mind encompasses sensation, sense perception, feeling and emotion, dreams, trait of character, personality, unconscious and volitional aspect of human life, as well as the more narrow intellectual phenomena such as thought, memory, and beliefs. So if we compare the mental phenomena of mind that was recently listed as consciousness, intentionality, free will, teleology, and normativity, comparing the Aristotle's 5 modes of mind, he emphasized the scientific knowledge called episteme, the technical art skills, the techne, and the practical wisdom, phronesis, and the intelligence, intuition, nous, and last not all, the wisdom, Sophia, which is very important during the mind and intentionality. Thomas Pernu, a Finn philosophist, determined or describe, and the mind is intuitively modeled as an intentional system, whereas the brain is modeled as causal system. This might both be valid model, even if intentionality is inconsistent with the principle of causality. But the two, as it could be true, can exist next to each other. Then, of course, because this kind of dualistic concept of the human being that is a mental realm, and there is a physical realm, and how these two feel to run connected each other as the mental properties, intentionality, consciousness, free will, teleology, normativity, coupled with the physical realm, physical world. Intentionality with the in existence, semantic context, the syntactic, mechanical concept, concrete objects, or the free will, whether the free will is deterministic or undeterministic physical world can be valid, or the teleology, this the goal-directed concept with the causal mechanical process, or the normativity, the functionality of norms, the rationality of norms, which is good or bad, and the actual factuality of the physical world. So if we start with the very early, around the 1027, the Egyptian anatomist or interested in the animal or human build-up, they gave a very nice drawing sketch how the nerves arising from the two eyes and coalescence, fuses, and again diverge and goes into the brain. Later in the 15th century, there is a woman headdress where we can see very clearly how this heart is pictured, drawn, and there are two stream goes up to the head, the brain, and then Aristoteles, according to Aristoteles' concept was the brain is not responsible for any of sensation. The correct view that the seat of soul sensation is a region of the human, of the emotion and pleasure, and generally all sensation plant have their source in the heart. So that was Aristotle's concept of the heart and the brain, where we think about mostly the heart. And a similar concept appeared Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, The Little Prince novel, where he said, "It is only the heart that can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." So in this concept that the heart is kind of seat of the emotion and knowledge, we we can see and find some expression that we used to say, or still we say, that I know these poems, or I know that text by heart. So not by mind, but by heart. And here I just want to show very quickly how they describe and imagine the mind and the universe connection. And of course, this image and the text was writing at that time, the 1621, as at that time was the Latin as international language, that now the English take place instead of the Latin. And we see that the mundus sensibilis, that actually the whole outside world that we can sense by our sensory organs, the nose, the taste, the eye and ear, and that goes into the skull, into the mind, where the mind is. And then there is a mundus imaginabilis that we just imagine about the whole outside world also enters into the brain. And these two both connected with a nice worm-like channel, which is the big man's, the mind, and that elaborate everything that was entered into the mind. And the mundus intellectualis, which has mostly the abstract thought, which also enters the mind, and it will be elaborate and will be recognized, cognized between the connection and interactions of this. The really big great thinkers, the Descartes concept of mind is known, that he expressed that cogito ergo sum. So the mind is a very important and central things in the human being, because actually the mind gives the real principle, the real essence of the human being. But he discussed about that the mind is non-physical things that we cannot grasp. The body is a physical thing, but these two interact with each other. So, but how it is happened, the non-physical and physical, actually they cannot mix, cannot interact really each other. So then, according the tale, the narrate, Descartes was walking on the Saint Germain Royal Palace garden and saw a statue that was moved by a hydraulic system at the central part. So he thought that he should find something central in the in the brain that would be the place where the mind resigned. So, and therefore he find this pineal gland, which is in the center of the brain, and equally sees the left and the right side. So then, of course, a lot of philosophers discussed about the mind. I just listed a couple of Kant, Hegel, Husserl, Heisenberg, Schrödinger, Wittgenstein, but Jaspal gave a very nice talk before about these people. So I won't touch further this. Maybe I just mention Wittgenstein description about the philosophy, that he says that the philosophy unties the knots in our thinking that we have in senseless way put there. The result of philosophical thinking of the right kind is not a truth discovered, but a confusion dissolved. So, and when I came across a couple of several philosophical paper on this topic, the mind and intentionality, and I was just amazed how many pages they describe this problem. And I remembered a very nice film of Milos, the Amadeus. I think probably many of you saw it, when the young Mozart composed a very nice piece of music. And he, because Salieri was the older musician in that Baron court, the young Mozart showed his composition to Salieri and asking him what you are thinking. So Salieri answered him that too many notes. And Mozart replied, it is not, it is just how many is needed. So I thought that I was about in the same situation when I saw these papers, that I thought that it's too many words. Probably the philosophers would answer me that not too many, it is just only what how many is needed to describe this problem. So it's very, very, very big, still unsolved problem. So if we go through a little bit now, the biological side of this problem, of course, the problem was, the first is that we have to know about the structure of the brain, because in the old times, so in the Greek and Romans time, even later, wasn't allowed an autopsy of the human. So they did some very secretly, but later in the 19th century, the anatomist and physician Franz Joseph Gall, Austrian doctor, investigated the brain, and he noticed some bumps on the brain, and they thought that every tiny, this bump of the brain has very specific characters of the human being that even because there is a very close connection between the brain and the skull, probably the brain bumper appears on the skull as well. And and they delineate several areas of the skull, which carries the different characters. The later, almost at that time living this French physician, Florence, had a different idea, and as he practiced the physicians, neurologists, he described that all perception, all volitions occupy the same seat, the cerebral organs. The faculty of perceiving, willing, merely constitute therefore a faculty which is essentially one, the brain. Later, Paul Broca and Carl Wernicke, also neurologists, during their practice, noticed that some people couldn't speak, some other people couldn't understand the spoken language that was heard, and they described a very specific area of the brain. Unfortunately, because their patients died, so and they made an autopsy and dissected the brain, and they noticed a specific area which was described, that is broken, damaged brain area happened, and therefore the patient couldn't speak. And also Wernicke described another brain region that was damaged, and therefore the patients couldn't understand the spoken language. And that we still now keep this name on this brain area. We called it Broca area and Wernicke area. At around the end of the 19th century, Paul Flechsig, also a neurologist, anatomist, gave a lecture delivered in Vienna, and he expressed his sense that the brain is the thinking organ. So how the brain is working is the mind is the product of the brain function. So here I just like to show very quickly the Franz Joseph Gall, the phrenologist, or the cranioscopia about the skull, how he described and delineated several area which is characteristic of the humans. He investigate criminals in the jail, and investigated his colleagues also, and later his follower Spurzheim and Combe extensively completed this idea, and here we can see there's so many different area is related to these characters: combativeness, destructiveness, self-esteem, benevolence, firmness, wonders, individuality, wide perception, memory of thinking, linguistic perception. And I just want to make a hint that at this time, the 20th century, the genetics is urged to find some genes that maybe play a role or responsible for these different characters. But not in just in the European area, but here the Asia. There is in China appeared this physiognomy, it's called, where they thought also that we can judge something about seeing the people face. And of course, there was some objectivity on this observation, because we really see if a person, the cretinism or hydrocephalus or Addison disease, hyperthyroidism appears in the face, it is also affected on the mental mind capacity. But I'll just go back in these two images. Just recently discovered that today's also very intense investigation is going on using the computer techniques in different companies in Cognitech, Clearview, FindFace, PIM Eyes is working on sophisticated programs that we, or better say, the computer can recognize a face, and this recognition of the face is used as security, and it's probably in other aspects like physiognomy, and who knows what else could be in the people's mind using this computer help programs. Also, if we see the Chinese philosophical concept of the body and mind relationship, that was a discussion about the body and the mind. I think that not just the Chinese, but the Indian culture also is absolutely, I think, a living, still a living concept, the soul wandering. So whether the after the death of the body, the mind is a survival something, and goes out of the body and joined to the cosmical intelligence mind, and then it will be shared or distributed to another person, and at the birth this fragment untouched, unchanged, or something somehow modified, enter to another person, or enter to an animal, and so on. So the mind have a very different lifespan in the circle of the life. Still the body is, if it is dead, so it goes either burned or buried in the soil and became a dust, as the religions people also say that you were created from dust and you have to return to dust. But the soul is given by God from the cosmical intelligence. It will be taken out, and that will survive. So just if we go through very quickly during this period of life, as the researcher or the physician Hippocrates, 400 before Christ, described the source of our pleasure, merriment, laughter, and amusement, as of our grief, pain, anxiety, and tears, is none other than the brain. It enables us to think, see, and hear, and to distinguish the ugly and the beautiful, the bad and the good, pleasant and unpleasant. Diaphragm or nor heart neither take part in the mental operation. Just remember the earlier slides where Aristotle is told that actually not the mind but the heart is the seat of the mind. So Hippocrates, as a practicing physician, had a very different idea. So then a philosopher and comes Schrödinger opinion about the world is a construct of our sensation, perception, memories. It is convenient to regard it existing objectively on its own, but it certainly doesn't become manifest by its mere existence. Its becoming manifest is conditional on every special goings on in very special part of this very world, namely on certain events that happen in the brain. That is an inordinately peculiar kind of implication which prompts the question what particular properties distinguish these brain processes and enable them to produce the manifestation. So it means that even everybody sees the same outside world, the so-called empirical domains, but the concepts, what or thought, what was built up in the brain and manifested or recognized in the mind, it could be individually very different. Francis Crick, I think that is who was involved discovering the double spiral DNA, James Watson, described your joys and your sorrows, your memories and your ambition, your sense of personal identity and free will are in fact no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules. So they're all chemicals. Joy Hears described that in science, the unknown is our home base. And if you know what you are doing, you shouldn't be doing it. We can rely on the data for answer without prior knowledge. So that would be, according her thought, the progress, the intuition of the mind. I find it very interesting how the physicist approach the mind. That was, I think that's Leonid Perlovsky, probably the physicist knows him very well. It seems to me attacked the psychology and even the neuroscience, whether it can be say that is science. He described, is it possible to turn psychology into hard science? Is it possible to describe the mind based on the few first principle of physics does? The mind with its variabilities and uncertainties, the question of perception and elementary cognition to emotions and abstract ideas to high cognition. Is it possible to turn psychology and neuroscience into hard science? So he he just questions whether the psychology and even the neuroscience are real science, because he argues that the science based on to making prediction, collecting data, and making experiment. And in the psychology, so collecting data, so what is the real hard data when the psychologist can collect? So yeah, it's kind of a yes or no. The neuroscience that probably I would say that still I accept as a science because I was involved in that. But the neuroscientist really is working on the brain, trying to recognize the whole structure of the brain, and they do degeneration study, so it can be very well see the result of the experimental experiment. So I would say that yes, maybe it is a hard and I would tell that probably the neuroscience belong to the science. So because it seems that the physicians have this um, educational background that the forces that we know in this day, that's the gravitational forces or the electromagnetic forces and the weak strong nuclear forces, that we know much about this, describing with the physical law. And now they approaching to uh, to know, discover what the mind force is. And Perlovsky listed the fundamental principles of the mind, brain, and described here this the fundamental principle is the concept, the instinct, emotion, behavior, cognitive hierarchy, knowledge instinct, aesthetic emotions, perception of objects, vague representation, and the dynamic logic. So the concepts he described as an intellectual tool, which we discriminate in the outside world. The instinct that we born with, and he also described that there is a basic and a higher instinct, and the behavior also. Similarly, a knowledge instinct he described as a basic instinctive knowledge and the higher knowledge. He says that the mind mechanisms are organized into approximate hierarchy of concept and aesthetic emotions. And he shows here the dualistic hierarchy of the mind, which is the cognition, and the language goes parallel each other. And of course, as the language is increasing, and the knowledge also it's getting more colorful and wider. So this concept was similar as Chomsky described, where he thought that the cognition and the language is very different things. And Perlovsky told that it's very interesting that why the children learn language about by age of 5 or 7, but do not think like adults until much later. And I just cite the Bible about the St. Paul and the First Corinthian letter wrote, "When I was a child, I spoke like a child. When I became man, I gave up childish way." So, but Perlovsky posed the question, so what really happened that the childish mind and the adult mind is very different? Has anything structurally changed in the brain, or what happened in this. It's probably a good question. By saying the biologists, probably the brain structure changes during this development until we reach the so-called adult life, and the the mind, which is which its content, it's kind of empty space, and during the years, as we collect the information from the outside world, filling up, and the brain mind could elaborate and construct the thought. And of course, Perlovsky arised the question, so how it's happened, the thinking? The mind is thinking some kind of abstract mechanism, processes, and when it's really reached the thought, then it became use the language to express it, or the mind using the language to create a thought. So it's kind of ambiguous question. So, and then he talked about the emotionality of language and cultures. And I was a little bit surprised at how he described that the English language as unemotional, and the Arabic language is very emotional language. So it comes up that we talk about in the group, and we thought that it's very difficult. How can we communicate with others? How can we express our thought that was created in our mind? It is really enough that language, that words we can use and we can express. It is really completely can we express our thought, so we can completely communicate with the others with our complex emotional thinking. So then Perlovsky also tried to do, as he is just a physicist, that he tried to describe the mind processes with the different mathematical equations, because he thought that the impulses that reach our sensory organs and goes into our brain and we recognize it, it takes about 150 milliseconds. And during these 150 milliseconds, he thinks that is a very unconscious process, but very important process happening in the brain, is actually he thought that the image that arrived into the retina is a kind of vague image, and this vague image the the brain has work on it and to make it crispy image. And when this so-called upper down and then or top down and bottom up process happening during this 150 seconds, after that, when the vague image and the crisp image in the mind appears, then it appears a thought, a cognition in the brain. But then the kind of biologist argue that if we just want to describe all biological process with physical tools, the mathematical equation, then we got semantic zombies or phenomenal zombies or free will zombies. We have described the emotions, the the individuality of the brain. Francis Crick critic was very sharp, saying we are not receptive to physicists trying to apply exotic physics to the brain, about which seem to know very little and even less about consciousness. But I think it's probably changes. So I'd like to turn on now a little bit to the brain and show you what we know about the brain. So in this image, we can see very different kind of animals, and according the brain image is given, and somehow it represents the size of the the brain. And you will see here the human brain is the largest, 1500 grams. And here also a comparison, mouse, monkeys, and the human brain, that we can see that here the olfactory bulb, the olfactory brain is diminishing, and almost we cannot see, almost disappear, but of course not disappear, just very tiny will be the olfactory organ in the human. But if we see the frontal lobe and the whole telencephalon is hugely growing up, and even the mouse and rats very smooth, then the garification, the folding is coming hugely. And here in this table, we see different animals and the number of neurons. And interestingly, we see that the African element has almost three more many neurons in the brain than we have. But if we compare how many neurons in the cerebral cortex are, then we see that the African element has much less neurons in the cerebral cortex that we have in. So just showing you a little bit about the histology of the brain, which I think that's is important as the neurologist, neuroanatomist, neuroscientist says that the structure is very important. There is no function without structure. So the structure somehow describe or confine the function. So here we see Cahal impregnation about the brain, the neurons, soma, and the neurons, dendrite, how large, and ending at the very superficial layer of the brain. And here are the cerebellar cortex using antibody staining, and we see here the Purkinje cells and the other cells, and here is the glial cells in the cerebellum, and here we see the vasculature of the cerebellum. So you can imagine, put this together, and they're all three existing, and all three have enough space in this structure. It's pretty hard to imagine, but it's true that all things have a space, occupied their own space. And the different genetical technique staying the cerebral cortical neurons at the different color. And here we can see a three-dimensional image of the neurons, how they relate to each other. And here is the synaptic contact that the brain is using. And here, electromicroscopic image, we can see that's a very dense structure, and there is no space among the structure. Only the intercellular space is about 200 nanometer. And here in this plate, we see the synaptic contact, which is communication between and among the neurons in the cortex. So, and as we discovered the connection between the brain and the spinal cord during using the different degeneration technique. At that time, we used to use these diagrams showing that here the neurons going and ending there and goes up to the cortex and so on. But as the new techniques developed, so there's the diffusion tensor image about the fiber connections inside the brain, which is mostly the corpus callosum, and we see how dense and huge connection are between the neurons. And another field, kind of mathematicians developed the science of network, and one of the representative, that Barabashi Albert Laszlo, described the connection as a, net web, which can be described and label some dots or center as a hub, which has more connections than the other. And he thought that maybe during this concept can be put together some good process how the brain is working. And that this concept was also followed recently. Schwanson, a nice anatomist, to put together the the connections between the cerebrum. So we just uh, uh, use these different points and neglecting the real structure, but of course is in our mind. So the other aspect, of course, that we can detect how the brain is working. So because the brain during the working using electricity, so it's generated, so the neuronal cells generate electricity. And Berger was in 1929 discovered that if he put some electrode on the scalp, then we can see some electrical images on the screen, which is see how these waves appear very differently. But the epileptic seizure shows a very different image, a very intense high firing, which is periodically appears during the seizure. Another example, if we put an electrode in one cell, then we can see how the cell generate action potential according to their own working priority. They produce action potentials very rarely, then it's more densely. So this every line is represent one cells, and that shows the action potentials. So then, of course, that was a big question. So how the brain or the mind is handling the information that entered to the brain through the sensory organs. I think that we can see somehow it's working like a computer. If I take a TIFF image, then the TIFF image is tagged with different numbers that the computer can associate with the image. So then the researcher discovered when, for example, here they showed an image to the cat, and they recorded the electrical activity of the brain. And that of course, it depends how quickly the recording time is in. The action potential is just a single line, spike lines. But if we run it very quickly, these spikes it's become very wide. But a third one appears at the spike, and they discovered that that's the gamma oscillation, which goes more than 40, 80 hertz. And they thought that's probably this is the tagged, which which is the gamma oscillation is helping tag the entered fraction of the language or images in the brain, and these images during the brain migration, primary, secondary, tertiary cortex, and assembling at the associated cortex, this fragment carries the tagged, and then the brain, the mind can put together, assemble together again. So, and they thought that the primary afferences, even they attach to the specific neurons of the brain, they innervate, stimulate the so-called interneurons, and these interneurons generate the gamma oscillation that will tag the fragment of the image in the brain. So as Broca and Wernicke discovered more about the brain function, seeing the patient, so Roger Sperry also turned to the patient where an accident, the split brain occurred, and at that time was a concept about the two hemisphere, how which is dominating on the other, whether the left hemisphere is a dominating or the right hemisphere is a dominating things. During the split brain, and later when the treatment of epilepsy, some kind of epilepsy is treated by neurosurgeon, which as they cut through the corpus callosum completely or partially, and the epilepsy mitigated. That turned out that actually we don't speak very sharply left or right hemisphere dominancia, but rather joint assembly working, where the two hemisphere sharing to making the job well done. But of course, there are some where is the left brain is more part of the job, takes care than the right So is the language or the drawing or the space function. Space function is the right, but the calculation here is the left brain. So in this image that I just try to show you how the recent research that the Swanson tried to do to understand the brain structure, how it's built up and how it's organized. And he talked about the three shell structure of the brain. Then probably I can tell you that is understandable on the base and on the brain developmental, and Swanson tried to use that knowledge and use a kind of brainstem. This the basic and ancient part of the brain, which found in the very tiny animals, mouse, that I showed later. And here in this, the the brainstem would be this part. That will be the one, the basic part. And the next one is this nuclei. There's the striatum and the globus pallidus, and the other side, that will be the second layer of the brain. And the third layer would be the cortex. So according to this three layer, the basic function is residing in the first layer, the brainstem, which is play a role in the function of the very basic biological function, the breathing and the heart controlling part, and the and the sleep and the waking cycle. And of course, the information goes further into the nuclear shell, the second, and of course the the third shell in the cortex. Of course, the psychologist Maslow created this pyramid as described: the physiological needs, the safety, love, self-esteem. So as we go further to the cortex, the psychological characters of the human being is built up at the top.
Bela, you can take some water if you like, because
Sorry?
Take some water.
Yeah.
Moisten the throat.
Yeah.
Then you can go faster. Okay.
Yeah. So that's Swanson talking about the behavioral control, which was described already. Cahal that described that there are, so at the spinal cord level, the reflex arch, which is functioning, the improvement, the prompt movement, and there are some information going to the cortex, and that he is calling the psychomotor neurons. 1949, Maruzzi and Magun described the formatio reticularis, which is function to put the brain, the cortical neurons in an active awake position, and then will be ready accept the incoming information. So the behavioral control is seeing at the upper part of the brainstem, and of course controlled by the second and the third layer of the brain, which has, of course, the neurohormonal influence of this behavioral control and modify it, how it appears. And here is the sketching of this problem. And then maybe it is interesting, this Vesalius that Swanson thought, which was described in the Humani Corporis Fabrica, and and he said, almost single-handedly founded the modern life sciences with extensive personal observation, descriptive as well as experimental, and healthy skepticism for authority still echoes in the final conclusion drawn here. I can, in some degrees, follow the brain's function in this section of living animals' experimental physiology with sufficient probability and truth, but unable to understand how the brain can perform its official imagining, meditating, thinking, remembering, or following various doctrines. However, you may wish to divide or enumerate the power of the reigning soul. So, so Svensson says that we have no big progress in the mind research that Vesalius thought. Here is just show the connections that they try to use the computers, divide the brain at different parts, and trying to use this network image, how these connections happening in the brain may be useful to know how the mind will be working. So in this, I just try to show you that not just the neurons and the glial cells and the vasculature build up the brain, and their function is important in production of the mind and the different response. But it's very important the different chemical that we have in our brain, which chemicals very much influence different function of the brain. And I just listed a couple of the dopamine, serotonin, noradrenergic, choline, and the histamine, as here are the chemicals, that these are very important in the memory, in the attention accuracy of the serotonin and the dopamine in the in the memory is driving the eagerness to know, and the noradrenergic is produced the locus ceruleus nerves, which has to put in tone of the brain and the body, but also it's very important in the emotional creation. The cholinergic system also very important in the learning, cognition, and emotional process. And the different part of the brain is important in this production and something. So I find so the mind is very difficult in the neuroscientist, and it's mostly the philosophical people write a lot of paper about. The neuroscientists try to do something that they can grasp and some objective changes to find. So, and that would be the creativity, which also, of course, a kind of two-sided. So we have to go to the patients and see how they behave. So and they think that the creativity is very important because all human accomplishment has this same origin. Perkins and Csikszentmihalyi says that the creative idea will be defined simply as it is both novel and useful in a particular social settings. So Flaherty found that the frontal and temporal lobe plays an inhibitory role in the creativity, but the so-called mesolimbic dopamine system is a stimulating effect which goes to the temporal lobe, the amygdala, and to the frontal cortex. And that is very important, how much dopamine is produced by this system, because if we see this graph, so and see how much dopamine is produced, then the creativity is changing through that the dopamine stimulate the creative drive. But if there is too much of dopamine produced by the brain, then the excessive dopamine is manifested as mania or psychosis. if there is a small amount of dopamine produced, then we became depressed or abulia. So, the very important the balance of these chemicals, and they found that the temporal lobe plays a very important role in if somebody is so-called hypergraphic or can be accompanied with mania. The frontal lobe disease mostly manifested in compulsive or depressive diseases. And they listed a couple of writers, Dostoevsky, that was epileptic, so it has some temporal lobe disease, and therefore he wrote so many stuff. So in this slide, I just want to show that really the creative drive is balance between the positive and the negative mood, which the positive and the negative mood both can be activating and deactivating the creative drivers. Also, the negative mood can be activating and deactivating the creative minding. And they say that it depends if the negative mood activating the creative drive, then will be a sad music will be composed, or a sad poems will be wrote with the poets. So they try to compare the mood and the creation. And here also that the dual pass, which has a Negro style called password, which drives the creative drives and the executive function appeared. So if we see this image, then we see here that really the two hemisphere play a joint role in the creation, and here they investigated the musicians, the verbal and visual spatial creativity in the mind, putting the person in the MRI, and they saw that the musician, which is this right circle and the right field circle, appear that as the frontal, parietal, temporal cortex appeared, but in both sides, so the left and the right hemisphere functioning during the musical creativity, and similarly a verbal and the visual spatial creativity. And interestingly, there's the cerebellar cortex also joined to this production. So if I turn to the intentionality, which is the other important function of the mind. That's also the first was Franz Clemens Brentano, a German philosopher, wrote that all and only mental phenomena are intentional. No physical phenomenon exhibit intentionality. So the intentionality is a kind of property of certain mental state, and this mental state can be directed to the object or non-object state. And therefore, the intentionality as intention is two different things, because the intentionality is kind of can be directed a given mental state. The intention is appearing causal something that a priori before the action. So then there are, of course, again, several concepts according to the different groups of people, how they handle and think about intentionality. So the cognitionism group is taking just is kind of sandwich model, is that the sensory input going into the brain, and there will be through the mind the cognition, and then response the external something is the motor outputs. So, and therefore they thought, oh, that's we can create the artificial intelligence so that can do a machine also. So then there was a kind of an active embodied approach, which also there are two groups, the radical enactivists and the predictive processing activities. The radical enactivist is saying that the basic cognitive capacity, the intentionality directed as it's fine, but the representation in the brain is not as given. So it is a very different part, the mental representation, and these two somehow is not connected. But the other people saying that is too awkward, and then the mind should somehow very well handle this process, and they thought that the brain is a predictive machine which can predict the future events and can compare the consequences of the intentionality, and then can modify the whole structure. So then the equivalent thesis and the separatist is the same. So whether it is a different, the intentionality and the mental representation, or it is coexistent with each other. So, and they say that the intentionality is based on different levels. Self-organization, that's the brain, the mind feel itself. First, it has to feel that is the brain, the human is as itself separate from the others, and and that's also the intentionality is conceived as basic feature of the organism as the individual that can't show the part in the whole relationship. But the intentionality also has a kind of other thing that the philosopher brought up, the mind wandering. So whether the intentionality and this intention and the mind wandering how relate to each other. So if we are engaged in something, in reading, and somehow that you just recognize that your mind isn't there with what you are reading, the mind is somehow is wandering around, and now they are thinking that whether this mind wandering has intentionally happened or non-intentionally, and the person whether aware of the mind wandering or later meta awareness happening that realize that really I am not engaged there, my mind is not there, it is just wandering somewhere else.
I have a quick
And the
question on this part.
intentionality is also very important regarding the morality and the group and intergroup attitude that we see today's event also could be very important, how these people mind is working, and and see the consequences, whether they could foresee what they doing now and what will be the consequences. So the other is the Turner has brought up interesting something that says if the physical science and the neuroscience is working on principles of causality, which means that is a value neutral things, so that what is the model, but the intentionality is a little bit more qualified, and the mind with the intentionality has a different higher aspect. The intentionality, the mind bring us the value, and therefore he thought that the intentionality is what matters model, where the mind with the intentionality can see the different object or abstract things in the environment, which is more valuable or less valuable, and then the attention is guided toward that. And the Danetian model people are a rational agent who choose of information their beliefs and desire. So they know what ought to do to carry out a rational behavior. So then it is also a very interesting and probably the philosophers, and we can talk about very, very much. So really how the people rational, how they realize what their belief and desire appropriate and good or bad. And because it is very important, because all actions are emotional, and at the same time they have their reasons and explanation. So this is the nature of intentional behavior. So everybody can explain why they behaving in this way or that way, because based on their belief or desire. So, but here we see, so what is needed that the actions and behavior that they are going to be appropriate, good and correct. So there is the very good filter is the wisdom. The wisdom is the measure of practical understanding and rationality of intentional being. The objective standard for the reality, rationality. The wisdom is the measure of conformity of a subject belief. So, because the intentionality has a practical function in life, just because some intentions are objectively more adequate, wiser, more rational, and more adaptive than others. So everybody should use the wisdom to recognize what is appropriate and not appropriate. So what the two other things that Turner brought up, that the intentionality can goes wrong, that I remember always, Bijoy always said, if he raised a question towards somebody and somebody very superficially tried to answer, then Bijoy, that is your ignorance, that you don't see your lack of knowledge, your misunderstanding the actual interest, is your defective reasoning process. So that's the ignorance that's probably it's for play an important role, how the people just wrongly acting, behaving. And the other is, he called the foolishness, is deficit in a subject temporary distorted wisdom when compared to the baseline wisdom. Here again, he talked about the morality and the group and the social interaction, which is also very high. So here I try to show one neuroscientist how they try to make an experiment on intentionality, and they used again this MRI technique where the patient, when the patient, the human being were asked to do something, and then the MRI image showed the activation at the different brain area. And they describe that actually they found two network, and there was the intentionality network, and that was the self-agency network. So it means that the human being, the mind, should work on their itself first to set up the mental state to do an intentionality network, and they found that the intentionality network is it more rostral to the frontal cortex, the superior cingulate cortex, anterior insula, and the self-agency is a little bit behind. There's the posterior insula. I don't see this a little bit blue, and this almost the parietal cortex. And interestingly, it sees that some in the cerebellum, occipital lobe, that they say that there are two models, the inverse model that compute the motor command that it should be ready for execute the action. But there is a forward model, which is a little bit more, that should be able to predict and adjust the action of the intentionality. So, and then again, using these MRI images, we can see that a different experimental setting, a different brain area is showing activity, and we can see that are working. But actually, what's going on in the cellular level, it is not known. Here again, a couple of images, how the activity in the resting state, showing up the language, music, images when we close eyes, open eyes, and the visual image, auditory image. So the brain, many areas of the brain are very active, but the actual neuronal working is not known. So the other thing is I found this interesting and important, and the researchers and the humanists also thinking that the decision making is very important, and the decision making was I think much earlier recognized by the people who are working in the business, in the advertisement. They know how the brain function, how the mind is elusive, how hard to make decision, and they can play with our mind to how we can do a decision or do a right and wrong decision. And here in this image that Bijoy drew my attention, and I just found that really recently the researcher have discovered that the thalamus area, the ventromedial, dorsomedial area is connected to the frontal cortex of the rat, which is also thought that somehow play a role in decision making. And the cortex send back impulses to the striatum and then back to the ventromedial thalamic circuit, and then the rat decide what to do, what to choose. But I found another thing is this the human experiment, which I found very interesting. There was an experiment that they showed the people water tank, of course, that by the computer image, and there was a water level that was emptied 20 seconds, and during these 20 seconds they showed different bubbles and different size of bubbles and colors of bubbles with different values attached to it. And the person had to decide during this 20 seconds which bubbles they use, because it could happen they miss one or two, they miss the big one or the small one. And they, the researcher discovered in the MRI images that interestingly, the human frontal cortex doesn't have really activation, but rather the basal forebrain, the nucleus accumbens striatum, substantia nigra, that we thought that the substantia nigra has a dopamine release, and this dopamine influence the desire to choose something. And then the habenula and the pedunculopontine nucleus just make a modification of this. But the very interesting is that this decision making happening so-called subcortically, but not in the very frontal cortex. You thought that the decision is happening. And it is just remind me David Kahneman, who is a psychologist and economist, and he got a Nobel Prize 2002 describing his finding that the people decision is very important and not always happening at the very cortical level, but rather a quick decision making happening in the subcortical level. So, and he wrote 2011. He is a Jewish psychologist and economist. So he wrote a book, 2011. It's called Fast and Slow Thinking. And he described that he thinks that the people brain has three different functional compartments: the reptilian brains, the mammalian brain, and the humanoid brains. And the decision mostly happening at the reptilian brains, so the people does not think thoughtfully, but just the reptilian is just grab and decide what to choose. So I found this is very interesting, and this neuroscientist found a kind of biological structural function of the David Kahneman idea to this reptilian, mammalian, and humanoid brain. So I think I would close with Joy Hirsch's statement. As with any tool in science, fMRI and complementary imaging techniques such as PET, EEG, and optical imaging are subject to limitations. Some of the hardest questions: how do neurons transform energy packets captured from the environment into conscious experience, still remain far out of our reach. Thank you very much for your attention.
Everybody can unmute and can show your video if you like.
Thank you very much.
Excellent, Bela.
You can unmute and also show the video. Okay.
Yeah. Bela, sir,
All
you
right.
can stop sharing the screen now if you want.
Okay, all right. Yeah, okay. I think it's wonderful, wonderful. I just wanted to say a few words and then you can take questions and so on. See, what you heard is the massive literature from the West on the in the brain and mind. Now, what we did not do and will do later, and you all probably, or many of you may be aware, there is a massive Indian literature on the subject. The question is, this kind of discussion about where things happen, how do we see, how do we hear, what happens in the brain, and whether brain as a structure exists or not, literature of that has not come down to us, or we haven't found it. But what has come down to us, and it is significant, I think people who understand this will appreciate, that is what Bela presented, that me as an object, Bela as a speaker, he is performing, he is conceiving, he is seeing, he is hearing, and then we can really create that process in our brain because it's in my brain, and then I can figure out. So what the Indian system did at long time ago, we don't know when, they tried to think that we are a part of the entire system, which basically means the human speaks through this system. And it has a strong implication. And I'll tell you what implication is. That implication is that I am a being, I'm capable of understanding everything that the universe gives me. It's not subjective. I'm capable. My faculties allow me. This hypothesis. But then they somehow, through their iteration and through their various processes, intellectual processes, they nail it down that that has to be cosmologically true. That is, human being is cognitive. That is, all information comes and I can handle. The question is, what's the proof? How do you handle? And then the question comes, that becomes your speech. That faculty that you receive by your ears, by your eyes, by your senses, by your organs, which you receive, you can express. You can express, and then it comes to anatomy, and we don't know the experiments, if any, and so on. And so that part we're trying to do now, that is, we have this basic speech units, and which did not happen elsewhere in the world. That is, basic speech units, we have syllables. They are our neural units. I'm speaking. I'm using those syllables. I'm speaking different language. So this particular contribution, that universe speaks through us in syllables, and they will call the Sanskrit word called akshara. So that is somebody used the word bija before. That is the seed of the universe in us. And there are multiple seeds and so on, things like that, and so many syllables. So I want to share that. But then you can question, then why should we read the brain? What was not answered is in the Indian literature, which is they referred but did not address or address philosophically. That is why we all have different voices. We speak. We can speak the same thing, but we speak in our way. We have a shwara. We have a voice. And that voice is distinctive. Each of you will speak differently. They have so voice becomes the signature of life. Your personality, your individuality. So individuality is not totally excluded. Individuality is there, but individuality is not explored. And I don't know why they did not explore. And that's our goal, to see that cosmologically it is true that we can cognize, but then when we express, why it becomes ours. They mention about it, but the physics of it, they don't get into. So that's the whole goal of our exercise here. We may not succeed, but I want to share that. So let us continue. And you have any questions to Bela? So can we do, you are all unmuted? Do another round of applause for Bela.
Thank you.
And then ask him any questions that you may
Bela,
have.
it was enlightening.
Oh, good. That's okay though. I think any comments that may have the material that you presented through Hippocrates to see, there is also Aristotle and so on, and up to even 2020. Yeah, the last paper, the proceedings in 2020.
Hi, Deva.
Proceed.
Hello.
I have a question, Bella. It's a very nice talk, and I have recorded some of it, so I'll go over it again. I have a question regarding the beating of the heart and the cognitive process.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that the heart is providing the clock for the. Am I right?
Oh, that's I don't know. So actually, this basic biological function, it just doesn't get aware of our mind. So actually, we don't feel that we even have a heart at all, or we can have a stomach or intestine, because under normal condition they are just working without sending real information to the cerebral cortex, or if they are sending, so it cannot, it won't get recognized. So we don't know how it is working. But the heart is a kind of interesting thing, not just because I showed that Exupery told that we see only the truth with the heart in the good things, and we say that I know something by heart or so. But if you think about the music, so the most quiet and enjoyable music, at least for me, of which that the tempo is very close to the heartbeat. So you see the classical music tempo is going about the heart, and that is very pleasant to the mind.
Good.
And
Very good. So we will do the Q&A up for half an hour. We'll close at 12:30, 12:06 now. So continue. Any other questions on today's talk?
Yeah,
what you heard today, mind, brain, intentionality. Yeah.
So we were talking about like system 1 and system 2 thinking towards the very end. You were mentioning thinking fast and thinking slow as like a kind of interesting book on, pinpointing like a dual process theory for the brain. So I was just wondering, like, what do you think of like moral intuitionism theories that like Jonathan Haidt and like newer theorists are proposing about the dual process theory, that like maybe we have some sort of intuitionism that's separate, that's faster, and then we have a reasoning capacity that's separate that we use to change our intuition and our immediate judgments?
yeah, that's a very important question, and then I think that the people and the group has to think about very carefully and use the so-called wisdom to think about how the consequences are our action and or minding and or speech or language is influencing the others, because people used to say that the most important and dangerous weapon is the speech, that you can smooth and instigate, arouse people. So you have to have really think about your mind carefully, how the normativity, morality is appear in your thought, in your action, and proper to the group and the intergroup behavior in the society. So it's very important.
Okay. Anybody else?
I have more questions, if anyone.
Yes.
Okay.
So like, I think at one point you were mentioning something close to like Hegelian phenomenology, kind of this, or Hegelian dialectics, which is like the self versus another, and how we can, is there any evidence in like, the anatomy that we compose identity based on another, or is it mainly in the psychology tests, where I think one of the most famous tests is like the mirror test with animals, where they have like the little dot, and like at a certain age people can recognize that the dot is themselves. So is there any evidence to this idea that we aren't necessarily born with an innate capacity for identity, that it's formalized through the other?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there is no anatomical location discovered, and probably they couldn't find, and maybe the neuroscientists haven't worked on this problem. So is a rather a practical neurologist and psychiatrist approach that, of course, as you, an individual person, your mind first have to be conscious. And if your mind is conscious, then you have to realize and you have to know about yourself, that yourself is an identity, yourself is a person, and you are separate from the others as individuals, but you belong to the others, you belong to the group, you are a member of the society. But this dualistic concept that the mind does and has to mind, that realize that the individual is a very personal individuality, because it is a unique person. It is very different from others, different in thinking, in different speaking, and in different behavior. But of course, because you have a wisdom and a good intentionality, you can join to the group and to be a good member of the group and a good member of the society.
I will come to that in when I handle the Indian linguistics and the Indian philosophy. It will probably happen in March, and then we'll go into intuition, more deeper analysis of intuition. So also when I'm saying about next lectures, I should also say our friend Prem will give a lecture in December, our next one. Every quarter we try to meet it. So December, so he will go through the speech models, that as speech is understood in the West, in the literature of the neuroscience, and then all linguistics. So then I will come in March, where I will try to put together that what did Indians think about it. But again, when I say when did Indians think about it, the literature is massive. So I can't say we'll do justice to everything, but we'll try to make as composite as possible so that we can understand. Because as I said before, our goal is to see where does the speech come from? How do the words develop? Because the fundamental difficulty is, as you can, if people are familiar with the current linguistics in the West, the words are canned. They're given to us and we can store them, we learn them, and then we use them. So the question is whether human being is designed to can words, and then whether human being is born as a German, a Russian, or a Hindi, or a Chinese. The human being is a human being, and then how does he acquire a language, and then how does he coin a word? So is the word permanent or the word concept permanent? So that is where India will come in. All right, other questions?
Yes, Professor, can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a wonderful explanation, Professor. And from Indian perspective, just I would like to know, since like your area of research is on that pineal gland, in Indian perspective, just I would like to know that in our ancient things also we have the third eye concepts, like Lord Shiva used to have the third eye, and with that he did all those things. In yoga philosophy also we used to come across some of the Agna Chakra. So for that, like various Bija mantras, all those things were there. Like, were there any connection with that, like recitation of those Bija mantras with that, the pineal gland? And also in our yoga philosophy, the Brahmacharya concept, it is there, like with that, like cerebrospinal fluid and the pineal gland. Is there any connection with that I would like to know, Professor?
Yeah, yes, thank you. So I think that Descartes also was thinking about the current opinion about the mind, that the ventricle is a location of the mind, and he tried to choose a kind of central part of the brain, and which is close to the ventricle and in the center. So it is really the pineal gland, which is the central and is symmetrically sees the two hemisphere. And in addition, also very important, as you just mentioned, that on the last slide that I show, that the decision making happening many times subcortically, and it is happening the striatal circuit, but the habenula is influencing it. And it is interesting that the pineal gland has two roots, which is ending or coming out to the two habenula. So we don't know exactly. That may be a future research goal, that's really from the habenula and the pineal gland interaction is an important in this subcortical decision making that I showed you in the last time, and that David Kahneman is emphasized very, very strongly.
I think I should comment, I will come to you. I should comment, Prasannaji, in this context, I don't want you to take from here as though the so-called insight or agya and the darshi that you said, whether they're physical or not. The question is, the philosophy behind that is, you know. So what you know is a larger context than what you know locally. So the brain can know what happens now in Jupiter. That is where your agya comes in. That is, I can know. So what I said before, the hypothesis that I have a capacity to know as a human being, that is there. I can know. But how do I know? I do physically, or Jupiter connects to me, whether I have a conscious connection in different objects, and how do I establish such connection? So those are all function of the other object. So what I have felt in my own yoga understanding and so on, that it is not here. You have to connect to me. And how do you connect to me is a function of you. Then only I can know about you. So I myself would be limited to how much I can know about you. Not that I cannot know, but it's a grace between two objects. We'll come to that. Yoga and prajna viveka when we do our Indian theory and so on. It's a good question. But my point is, I don't want you to take from here as a neurological phenomenon because it's unsolved, and maybe it will be solved. Maybe it is there. But the whole process of agya, if you know Sanskrit and so on, agya, is there. What is is not here. Something comes to you. That is, you receiving. Jnana is there. But by reception, you get the knowledge. Not by prajna. Prajna is your local knowledge. You can see. It's different than agya. Professor Mahanti.
Thank you very much, Professor Bela. Actually, you take about 10 lectures on the topics you gave, but I realized that you were confined by the time.
Thank you.
My point is that you may not have intended it, but the person that came through, that this is peculiarly, the questions you're asking as peculiarly modern humans.
Mm-hmm.
It assumes that the prehistoric humans didn't have these thoughts, that they couldn't express themselves. So the point I'm trying to make is that our questions are evolving, just like our mind.
Mm.
So for example, if I look at the orangutan and the baby touching the mother orangutan, baby looks very much like a human baby, slightly hairy.
Mm.
And the question would be, what kind of thoughts these primates have? Or what kind of thoughts the Neanderthals had before our present? So my point is that the questions you're asking is not confined only to so-called humans, but our thoughts are evolving all the time because our life is limited, so we don't have the historical perspective. But I can't see Neanderthals having the same thought on mind as we are having.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I wanted to point out, that it's not a peculiarly human thing that suddenly we became aware of it. I'm sure these questions have been there in various forms. Right
I
from the
think that
beginning.
is where the Indian logic does come in, because if we are one set, universe is one set, so orangutan is a part of this set.
Yeah, that assumes that only humans as we know.
No, why animals, also trees, also clouds. So it's a one set. The question is, the set is talking to me. The set has its own emotion. The set has, so we will use the word bhava later. Bhava. So they are all bhava, and that bhava is communicating to me to create my bhava. So this whole process, I mean, this is a kind of a theory, and that bhava then expresses in me as that object. So I'm not naming an object. I am trying to feel the treeness of tree. That is not the treeness, the universality of it. So when I know a tree, I think about the property of the tree, the nature of the tree, the colors of the tree, not that tree. So the generalization from one object to a larger object. And then the question is how large you go. So we'll come to that. I'll take, since we're also going into this, would you also unmute? And then two people I want to be thanked. Chandu. Chandu is there?
Chandu just left. He had
Chandu just
another
left.
call, yeah.
Chandu helped to host it. And Manish Srivastava, he is recording our program and he will get a record. So would you kindly unmute and thank them for their help?
Thank you.
And then also please thank Prem Nagar, who tried to register you all and organize this today. So would you please also thank Prem?
Thank you, Premji. See you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll take one more question and then we close.
Yeah, can I ask one question, please? Shivram here.
Yeah.
Sir, in your presentation, the more I think about it, one question that comes immediately: the brain is connected to genetics, but how this connection of genetics to brain manifests into mind and intentionality?
Yeah, that's very
Bela knows all about it.
Very interesting, very difficult question. Yes. So that's that maybe I can start with that in the Bible also described that your fate has been described already. And yes, if we think about the genetic risk, yes, our fate described in our DNA and RNA, how good they are, because according if our DNA and RNA, the genetic matters are good in our body, there we are healthy. We have a good brain and a good mind. But if the genetic stuff defected, and then it appears some diseases that already discovered that really some defected gene, if we have, then a disease appear, manifested. So as very important is in our mind, how is set up as a structure, a collection of neurons, glial cells, and vasculature. It depends our genetic inventory. And of course, if this structure complete and good and sound, the production of it, the mind, is so-called good, theoretically. Now it comes the development. So how the mind is develops, as the Chomsky and the Perlovsky, the physicist, suggested that the child mind is an empty space, and during the development is collecting everything, behavior and knowledge, and so morality responses we just learn from our parents, and then for relatives, and we go into school, the other kids, the teachers, and so on. In the society, we collect everything from the empirical domain, so the outside world. And that's also very much impact how our mind is developing. Because if you think that somebody got into a gang, a criminal group, so their mind has a different value, has a different wisdom, have a different intentionality. So the outside world very much influence how our brain is working. So therefore, as everybody is emphasizing, that it's very important, at least the first 5 years in the child development, how they influence, how the parents and the surrounding influencing it. But we can extend this, and we can tell that almost during the whole life, everything, the outside information that reach our brain is modifying our mind. And it is just our wisdom, the filter that we can analyze, and we can understand somehow this information, and recognize it, and we can react properly, morally good, according to this. So it's very important. But I think that, as you know, that the genetical people is trying to really discover some specific genes that are important in the memory, in the learning. That is the very hot topic in this society, because the memory and the thinking and the creativity is important, because that's the essential of the life. But now it's still very hard.
All right. Does anybody volunteer for a vote of thanks? Anyone who has not spoken? Anyone? Anyone wants to vote of
I will
thanks?
do it.
Okay.
I second it.
Thank
So
you.
do like that.
Thank you.
Very,
So
very
we
good.
close
Wonderful,
at
wonderful,
12:30.
Belaji.
Thank you.
All right. No, I think it's excellent. I think we learned a lot, quite a bit of material. I saw the slides yesterday. I saw what may not be finished. So 9:30 to 12:30 now, 3 hours. Half an hour took for our introductions and so on, but I thought they were useful. And so 2 hours talk, half an hour Q&A. So we close now. You will have a video will be sent to people, and then other questions that you may have or a discussion group, please mail the registration. I think Prem's mail you should have. He sent you registration, and then he can give you Bela's mail, and then we can discuss. And I will try to set up an email group. And if you want to contribute for any language work you have done or wish to do, neuro work, thought, voice, mechanics, intentionality, alphabet, speech processes, thought processes, action processes. So let me know. We are trying to, as I said, we're trying to make a quantity model, rudimentary, but hopefully we'll try to take a thought and make a word. And but there are many elements of it. So if you can contribute, if you want to help out, please let me know. Thank you all.